Hello again, it is me, Becky. Thank you for stopping by. Today I am going to share with you my February wrap-up. I read a total of 16 books in February, and I did do a couple reading vlogs, so I'm not going to go too far in depth about what the books are about, but I will share with you my star ratings, and I will link the vlogs that I did down in the description if you want to check out what these books are about, more about them and my thoughts on them and stuff like that. I did my Readery episode 2 vlog where I am trying to read the books that I own and clear off my TBR shelf. And in that I managed to read The Egyptian Book of the Dead, which I gave 3 stars. King of Wrath by Ana Huang, which I gave 5 stars. Rhapsodic by Laura Thalasso, which I gave 3 stars. I then did a vlog reading romances by Black authors for Black History Month. So I read The Perfect Waters Volume 3 by Leisha McCoy, which I gave 3 stars. Deserve Me by Nia Arthurs, which I also gave 3 stars. The Houses of Glass and Night by T.L. Combs, which I gave 3.5 stars. The Wolf by Dahlia Rose, which I gave 3 stars. And Vicious Bonds by Shanora Williams, which I gave 4 stars. I'm also not going to go in depth about my Black Hat Book Coven pick for the month, which was The Unmarked Witch by Miranda Lynn, which I gave 2.5 stars. I will have our live show discussion linked in the description of the video if you want to hear mine and the other Coven members' thoughts on this one. I then binge read a bunch of Ana Huang books. So I reread Twisted Games by Ana Huang, which is my favorite from the Twisted series. This is Bridget and Reese's story. Bridget is a princess, Reese is her bodyguard. This has age gap. They end up falling in love with one another, and it is just so delicious. I love this couple. This got 6 stars for me. Even on reread, I still freaking loved it. The spice is really great. It is a slow burn in my opinion. It takes well past 50% for them to actually get to their romantic involvement, but the sexual and romantic tension leading up to that is just so love it. So I definitely had to reread this one after reading King of Wrath. I then read King of Pride by Ana Huang, which is the second book in the Kings of Sin series. This is Isabella and Kai's story. Isabella is a bartender at the exclusive Valhalla Club where Kai is a member. He is a billionaire, of course, and he is a very smart billionaire. He's like a type A personality billionaire. This is complete opposites attract, and I only ended up giving this one 3.5 star. It has been my least favorite within the series that I binge read. My main issue with this was I did not like Isabella's character. She's very whiny and not like other girls. She comes from a very well-to-do family, but she's just like, oh, poor me. And I just could not stand her character. I loved Kai's character though. He is such a fabulous, great moral compass man. And if he were with anybody else, I think they would have been one of my favorite couples. In fact, before I even read this book, I thought that he would end up with Sloane because they seemed like they had a little bit more in common. I thought they would have gelled more together. So color me surprised when he ended up with Isabella, who is his complete opposite. I will say, even though I didn't like Isabella's character, this had probably my favorite smut scene within the entire series. It takes place in a library with a copy of Pride and Prejudice. It was hot. So if I could just get past my dislike of Isabella and her whole angsty thing, I probably would have liked this better because Kai is actually one of my favorite male characters. I just didn't like him with Isabella. I then read King of Greed, which is Alessandra and Dominic's story. Dom and Alessandra were once college loves when they were really poor, and now he is a billionaire, and she is trying to find herself, her own identity outside of their marriage because he has started to really put his work before his marriage, and she is feeling neglected. So she starts her own flower arrangement business. And they end up having to work through some of their marital problems and make their way back to one another. I gave this one 5 stars. I really liked the chemistry between Dom and Alessandra. I liked their second chance. I liked how once he saw the errors of his ways, just how much he was willing to work to get her back. I bought this copy off of Pango because it had character illustrations in it, and now I'm trying to find the rest of them with character illustrations in it as well. I had luck with one other, but I'm still trying to find the other 2. But yes, I loved this one. I then read King of Sloth, which is Sloane and Javier's story. Sloane is a publicist and Javier is just a rich boy from a family who I'm not really sure. I can't remember what his family does. His family's really rich though. And so his father hired Sloane to like keep him in check and keep him on the straight and narrow. And when his father suddenly dies, Javier has to suddenly think about taking over the family business that he wants no part of. And he convinces Sloane to enter into a relationship with him despite her reluctance. This is a grumpy sunshine where she is the grump and he is the sunshine. It's also a workplace romance. I love a good workplace romance. I thought they had amazing chemistry. Once again, he is so besotted with her. He is so in love with her. They have such amazing chemistry. And I really felt for Sloane as well. She was a bit of a stoic character, but I kind of related to her in some aspects. She was also very smart and very ambitious, and I feel like they gelled well together. So I'm kind of happy that she ended up with Javier instead of Kai. But they were just, I think they are probably my favorite couple of the Kings of Sin series so far that I've read. I just loved their chemistry and everything about them. I then read The Striker by Ana Huang, which is the newest series from her. I can't remember what the name of this series is, but it was like her sports romance series. You meet Asher Donovan in, I can't remember which book you meet him in, but he's seen throughout all of the books. He is a famous football player over in the UK, so you know what we in America call soccer. And Scarlett is a ballet teacher. So Scarlett is the sister of one of his teammates, who he and his teammate have a very like butthead relationship. They do not like each other, and when that translates into their game and them not winning, the coach ends up sending them to Scarlett's ballet studio to work on their flexibility, and hopefully by these two guys having to spend time together working through some stuff that builds a friendship or a connection that will strengthen within the team. So I only gave this book 3 stars. I wasn't that into this. For this being a sports romance, I definitely don't think it's a sports romance. When I think of a sports romance, I think of the characters actually being into the sport. You know, you see them play games, you see the intricacies of the games, and not just, hey, I'm a famous sports star, where you might see me play a game for like 3 paragraphs in the book. That to me does not make a sports romance. That to me is just, oh, I'm gonna write this character who plays a sport, and you might see him like, you know, score a couple times. When I think of sports romance, I want more. I want to see that character really be into their profession. I want to know that the author really knows what they're talking about and has really researched into what goes on within this sport and how it affects the characters and all that. So this to me just seemed like a contemporary romance where the male main character was a football star and the female main character was a dancer. Because outside of like maybe a page worth of them doing any sort of dancing and or any sort of football playing, the story could have had them be any other profession and it would have made just as much sense, in my opinion, because we really didn't see a whole lot of them in the sport. I also didn't feel the strongest chemistry between these two, although I will say Asher was a really great character in that he did whatever it took to make Scarlett's life easier once he finds out that she has chronic pain, which I really liked that representation. He just researches stuff. He tries to give her things that will make her life easier, and I really, really appreciated that. I liked some of the dynamics within his family and some of the discussions about the pressures that are put on children that play sports and how it becomes not so fun when they're good at it because their parents want them to succeed at it and things like that. But overall, this just wasn't my favorite Ana Huang book. I'm hoping that the next couple will do something that makes me feel their chemistry more. Another thing that I don't love is I hate that all of these books, they all follow a friend group who get together with another friend group. It's like you have this group of guys who have something in common and you have this group of girls who have something in common, and they all end up together. It's like, can we get an outside player here? Can we get a woman who is not attached to this friend group in any sort of way become a love interest? Can we get a guy who is not outside of this group come in and be a love interest to mix it up a little bit? Because it just seems very formulaic to have like this friend group of 3 or 4 women who all end up with this guys group of 3 or 4 guys. It's like, it becomes very predictable and very boring to read about when you know who the next couple is going to be based on the dynamics. So this wasn't a favorite, but I probably will continue. And that completed my Ana Huang binge of the month. I then read Anathema by Carrie Lake. I read this for Crystal and April's Mood Reader book club. This is a book that I have been wanting to pick up. I really enjoyed Carrie Lake's Nightshade duology, and I'm always saying I need to read more Carrie Lake books because her stories genuinely sound interesting to me. And I'm really glad that I read this one because this was no exception. I gave this thing 5 stars. So this is a dark gothic fantasy romance. We are following Maveth, who is living in this very religiously stifling village at the edge of this dark forest. It's almost like a puritanical village. Like, the women don't really have a lot of rights, and they praise this god like to an extreme. And whenever somebody is seen to commit a sin or do something wrong, they are thrown into these woods where some sort of creature eats them. They never come out alive. They all end up dead. And one day Maveth witnesses something at the edge of this woods, and she goes and she finds this dead crow. She buries it, and once she does that, she starts seeing ghosts. And something happens that leads to her entering these woods, and instead of her meeting her death, she finds this portal into this other world. She ends up in the hands of Zavander, who is a man who was supposed to kill her, but he ends up offering her sanctuary. They end up being forced together, and through them being forced together, they start to like each other a little bit more, become attracted to one another, and he and she are uncovering some secrets about why she can see the dead and why she can communicate with certain things, why she can somewhat wield the power that he has, and it leads to them discovering some interesting things about the world that they live in and the human realm that she came from. This was absolutely dark and creepy, had the sinister vibes. The creatures in here are just creepy. There's this giant crow that almost feels like a dragon, but it's a giant crow, and it is her familiar. Zavander has a familiar in the sense of a scorpion. This hooks you from the get-go. Okay, maybe not from the get-go, okay, because there is like a glossary at the beginning of this that has terms in it that I skipped over, but once you get into the story, then it really gripped me. I really like Carrie Lake's writing. She has this way of just sucking the reader in, and even though her books are chunkers, I just can't stop reading them. This has a really interesting like magic system involved with it, and a really interesting world that Carrie has developed for it. It's not quite like Fae world. These creatures are known by their own distinct characteristics. I know that Maveth is called a Corvicae because she has an affinity for the corvids, the crows. There's also Celestians and Lunasians. They're like people who gain their power from the sun and people who gain their power from the moon. And then there's other like groups of people intermingled as well. You should probably read the glossary so that you know what the hell is going on in the story, but I skimmed over the glossary and I just went with it, and then I learned as I went. So I don't advise doing what I did, but you know, you can if you want to. This also has some family dynamics as well as some found family dynamics in it. There's some messed up shit in this book, I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of moments of almost sexual abuse, sexual harassment. There's some kind of pseudo-incest in here. There's a lot of killing and death. There's a lot of just religious messed up stuff in here as well. So keep that in mind when you're reading it. The romance in here between Maveth and Zavander is a very, very slow burn. I want to say if there's any smut in this, I would give it like half a pepper, maybe 1 if I'm pushing it, but there's no real like penetrative sexual scenes in this book, but it is very slow going. The characters are full of trauma, especially Zavander. That boy has some trauma, let me tell you, and it's quite difficult to read about. There were a couple scenes in this book where I was just like, oh god, that's horrible, that's so horrible. Some things with his brother as well, it's just heartbreaking. And this book just captured me. It sucked me in. It wouldn't let me go. I couldn't stop reading it. And I loved everything about this. This is going to be a series, I believe. I was hoping it was a standalone, but about like 75% into this, I'm like, this is going to feel like either a series or a duology, because there's just too much to unravel and not enough time. And sure enough, it's going to be a series. So I can't wait for the second book to come out because I need to know how it ends, but she is a commitment, let me tell you, but it's well worth it. And the final book I read was Scythe and Sparrow by Brynne Weaver. This is the third and final book in her Ruinous Love series. So this series has been highs and lows for me. I loved the first book, I hated the second book, and this one I actually loved again. I gave this one 5 stars. So in this, we are following Fionn, who is the brother to the other 2 male main characters in the first and second book, and Rose, who is a circus performer. She reads tarot cards, and she also tries to help any woman who comes in who tells her about any abuse that they're experiencing or anything like that. And she takes it upon herself to kill the men who deserve it. And when she's trying to kill one of these men, she ends up getting severely injured, where she meets Fionn, and he ends up being her doctor. And because she is so severely wounded, she can't travel with her circus anymore, so he offers to let her stay at his house. What a great doctor. Where can I find these men at who I get injured and they're like, hey, come stay at my house, I'll take care of you? Only in fiction. But through them being in forced proximity in his home, they get to know each other, and she starts to bring out his dark side and tries to encourage him to embrace that dark side, because she likes the darker stuff too. Obviously, she kills people, and he is somebody who has been trying to fight his darker urges. And so she's like, no, I like that, you know, embrace it, whatnot. While they're in this forced proximity, they agree to, you know, just have fun with it. You know, sleep with each other, no strings attached, no expectations of it developing into a relationship. And of course, you know, they catch the feelings that they're trying to resist. I really liked the circus carnival aspect of this. I loved the forced proximity. I loved the duet narration of the audiobook. Once again, the narrators did a great job. The smut is unique and inventive. Lots of people will probably talk about the cotton candy scene in this book, which it was great. It was a fun time. But that haunted house scene is what really got me. I was listening to the audiobook and I was just like, okay. Yeah, okay. I thought these two had great chemistry. They sort of went from strangers to friends to lovers, so I liked seeing their relationship development along the way. And they weren't like too overly angsty or anything like that about it. They were just trying to fight their chemistry and whatnot. So I'm glad that I finished this series. I'm glad it ended on a high note. So those were the 16 books that I managed to read in February. Let me know down in the comments if you read any of these or if you plan to read any of these. But if you don't want to comment that, just let me know what your favorite book of February was. But if you don't want to even comment that, just leave me a circus tent emoji. Even though that wasn't even my favorite book of the month. What was my favorite book of the month? Probably Twisted Games, because I gave that one 6 stars, and I still freaking loved that book on reread. But yeah, it was either Twisted Games, King of Sloth, or Anathema? Yeah. But I think Twisted Games would have to win it again. I love that book. Okay, anyway. With that, thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, good luck on your March reading plans. Bye!